That night changed everything in ways I never expected. It all started with a simple request from my stepmother, Eleanor, asking me to stay home while my dad went on his usual fishing trip. At the time, it felt normal. After all, it was just the two of us most weekends. But I didn't realize this night would lead to something far beyond the ordinary, a night that would push the limits of our relationship and leave a lasting mark on me. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so I can continue bringing you more fascinating true stories like this one. And don't forget to watch this video till the end because this story is going to be incredibly interesting. The house felt unusually quiet that morning. My dad's usual presence was missing, and the silence felt strange. I had just finished my homework and was ready to relax when Eleanor called me into the living room. "Can you help me with something?" Her voice was soft, almost too casual. I could tell she was nervous, but I couldn't figure out why. "Sure. What do you need?" I asked, walking over to where she sat. Eleanor usually had a calm demeanor, but today something felt different. She smiled, but there was an intensity in her eyes that made my heart race. "Come sit down," she said, patting the cushion next to her. I did as she asked, unsure of what was coming but curious about what was happening. Eleanor leaned back, crossing her legs and looking at me with an intensity one hadn't noticed before. "You've grown up so much. You know that," she said. Her tone was light, but the words felt heavy with unspoken meaning. "You're not the little boy I used to know." My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't like her. We had always had a friendly, casual relationship, but today felt dangerous. "I guess," I mumbled, unsure how to respond. She leaned in slightly, her eyes never leaving mine. "No, really," she insisted. "You've changed, and I think we both know it." The way she said it sent a shiver down my spine. A strange tension filled the room, and I didn't know how to break it. "Eleanor, what are you trying to say?" I asked, finally forcing the question out. I needed to understand what was happening, why the air felt so thick with unspoken words. For a moment, she didn't respond. She just looked at me, searching my eyes for the right words. Then she sighed and stood up, walking over to the window. "Your dad's gone for the weekend," she said quietly, staring into the yard. "It's just the two of us here." I nodded, unsure of where this conversation was heading, but feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. She turned to face me, her expression unreadable. "You know, I've been thinking," she began, her voice steady but soft. "There are things I've wanted to talk to you about. Things I've never had the courage to say until now." I swallowed hard. "Like what?" She stepped closer, her eyes locking onto mine. "Like us," she said simply. The word hung in the air, and my heart raced. What was she implying? This didn't make sense. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice came out shaky. "What do you mean?" "Us?" Eleanor smiled. A small, knowing smile that made my stomach flip. "You've noticed it too, haven't you?" she asked, her voice low. "The way things have changed between us. We're not just stepmother and stepson anymore." My mind was spinning, trying to catch up with her words. But deep down I knew exactly what she was talking about. I had felt it too, the subtle glances, the lingering touches. But I always pushed the feelings aside, convinced they weren't real. I don't know what you're talking about. I lied, my voice barely a whisper. She stepped even closer, her presence overwhelming. And suddenly the room felt much too small. Yes, you do, she said softly, her fingers brushing lightly against my arm. You felt it too. I stood up abruptly, stepping away from her, trying to clear my head. Eleanor, this is crazy, I said, my voice trembling. You're my stepmother. We can't. We shouldn't. But she didn't back down. She followed me, closing the distance between us again. Why not? She whispered, her eyes burning with intensity. We're both adults. We don't have to follow anyone else's rules. I shook my head, trying to resist the pull that was drawing me closer to her. No, this isn't right, I insisted, though even as I said the words, I felt my resolve weakening. But what if it is? She countered, her hand reaching out to touch my cheek. The contact sent a jolt through me, and for a moment I was frozen, trapped in the web she was weaving around us. I wanted to say no, to push her away, to run out of the room and forget this ever happened. But I couldn't. Something kept me rooted to the spot, and I hated myself for it. I couldn't shake the feeling that things were spiraling out of control. The tension in the house grew unbearable. Every time I saw Eleanor, I felt the weight of what we weren't saying pressing down on me, suffocating me. But I didn't know how to confront it or stop the slow, inevitable pull dragging us both towards something dangerous. The days blurred together. Every interaction felt loaded, like we were walking on a razor's edge. I tried to keep my distance, avoiding being alone with her as much as possible. But it wasn't easy. She always seemed to find a way to be close, to make her presence known, whether it was a casual touch on the arm or the way she looked at me from across the room. It was always there, this simmering tension that refused to go away. Then came the night everything changed. My dad was working late, and I was trying to stay holed up in my room, hoping that if I avoided her long enough, things would go back to normal. But deep down, I knew that wasn't going to happen. I could hear her moving around downstairs, the sound of the TV playing softly in the background. The clock ticked loudly on my wall, each second dragging on, making it harder to ignore reality. I thought about calling a friend, making up an excuse to leave. But something kept me from picking up the phone. Instead, I found myself standing outside my room, listening to the silence that had settled over the house. It was too quiet, too still. And that's when I made the decision that would change everything. I walked downstairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. Eleanor was sitting on the couch, a glass of wine in her hand, her gaze distant as she stared at the TV. She didn't notice me at first. Or maybe she did, but pretended not to. I hesitated at the bottom of the stairs, unsure of what to say or do. But then she looked up, her eyes meeting mine, and I knew there was no turning back. "Can't sleep?" she asked, her voice soft, almost too casual. There was something in the way she said it that made my pulse quicken, the same way it had that first day. "Yeah," I mumbled, not trusting myself to say anything more. I walked over to the couch and sat down, leaving as much space between us as possible. But even with that distance, I could feel the tension, thick and unspoken. We sat in silence for a few moments. The only sound the quiet hum of the TV. I could feel her watching me, her eyes lingering on me in a way that made my skin tingle. I didn't know what to do. Didn't know how to break the silence without making things worse. But before I could say anything, she spoke again. "I've been thinking about us," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Jessica, we can't." I started, but she cut me off before I could finish. "Why not?" she asked, turning to face me fully. "Why are we pretending there's nothing between us when we both know there is?" Her words hit me hard. I wanted to argue, to tell her that she was wrong, that we couldn't go down this path. But the truth was, I didn't have the strength to fight it anymore. I had felt it too. The strange pull between us that had only grown stronger. I had tried to ignore it, convince myself it wasn't real. But now, sitting here with her, I couldn't deny it any longer. "We can't do this," I said, though my voice lacked conviction even as I spoke. I knew they were lies. She leaned in closer, her hand resting on the cushion between us. "We're not doing anything wrong," she whispered, her voice low and intense. "We're not hurting anyone." I shook my head, trying to clear the fog that settled over my thoughts. "But it's not right," I argued weakly. She reached out and placed her hand on mine, her touch sending a rush of electricity through me. "Who decides what's right and what's wrong?" she asked, her gaze never leaving mine. I swallowed hard, my heart racing. I wanted to pull away, to tell her to stop, but I couldn't. I was frozen, trapped by the moment, by the feelings I had been denying for so long. "We don't have to follow anyone else's rules," she whispered, her fingers tracing patterns on the back of my hand. "We can decide for ourselves what's right." I closed my eyes, trying to block out her voice, the feel of her touch. But it was no use. The walls I had built around myself were crumbling, and I didn't know how to stop it. Before I could say anything, before I could gather the strength to pull away, she leaned in closer, her lips brushing against my ear as she whispered, "Tell me you don't feel it too." Her words sent a shiver down my spine, and I hated how much my body responded to her, how much I wanted to give in. I opened my mouth to protest, to tell her that this was wrong, that we couldn't do this. But no words came out. Instead, I found myself turning to face her, my breath catching in my throat as our eyes locked. The moment stretched on, the tension between us growing thicker with each passing second. And then, without thinking, without planning, I leaned in and kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, as though we were both testing the waters, unsure of what would happen next. But the kiss quickly deepened, the heat between us rising as we gave into the desire that had been building for so long. My hands found their way to her waist, pulling her closer as her fingers tangled in my hair. The world around us seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of us, lost in the intensity of the moment. I knew it was wrong, knew that we were crossing a line we could never come back from. But I couldn't stop. I didn't want to stop. As the kiss deepened, my mind raced with 1,000 conflicting thoughts. I knew this was dangerous. Knew that we were playing with fire. But there was a part of me that didn't care. A part that had wanted this for longer than I was willing to admit. When we finally pulled apart, both of us were breathing heavily, our faces inches apart. Her eyes were dark, filled with something I couldn't quite name. And I knew that things would never be the same between us. "I've wanted this for so long," she whispered, her breath warm against my skin. "And I know you have too." I didn't respond. I couldn't. The truth was too much for me to handle. Too overwhelming. Instead, I just nodded, my heart pounding as the weight of what we had just done settled over me. But even then, I knew it wasn't over. The kiss had only been the beginning. There was more. There would always be more. After that night, everything changed between us. I couldn't look at Eleanor the same way. Every time our eyes met, I felt a rush of heat. A reminder of what we'd done and of the unspoken promise of what might happen again. The air in the house seemed charged with something dangerous. Something we both understood but didn't dare acknowledge openly. Days passed. Intense. Awkward silence. I kept my distance as best I could. But it was impossible to avoid her completely. Every brush of her hand, every passing glance, felt like a spark threatening to ignite the tension that simmered just beneath the surface. I knew what was happening wasn't right, but there was a pull between us that I couldn't ignore, no matter how hard I tried. One afternoon, while my dad was out again, the silence in the house felt unbearable. I was pacing the living room, trying to distract myself with the TV. But my thoughts kept drifting back to her. The memory of that kiss. The way her lips had felt against mine. The way my heart had raced. It was all too much. I hated myself for thinking about it. But I couldn't stop. Just when I thought I might lose my mind, I heard her footsteps behind me. I turned to see Eleanor standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The tension between us was thick, heavy with everything left unsaid. "We need to talk," she said finally, her voice low, almost hesitant. "Yeah," I agreed, my throat tight. "We do." She walked over to the couch, sitting down with a sigh. I followed, sitting across from her, keeping a careful distance. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I couldn't quite meet her eyes. I didn't know how to start. Didn't know what to say that would make any of this better. "I know things have been different," she began, her hands clasped in her lap. "And I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. That's the last thing I want." I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. "I don't know what to feel," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I mean, this isn't normal, right? We're not supposed to feel this way." Eleanor looked down at her hand, her expression troubled. "I know," she said softly. "But it's not something we can just ignore either. Can we?" I didn't have an answer for her. The truth was, I didn't know what we were supposed to do. Everything felt wrong. But at the same time, there was a part of me that didn't want it to stop. I couldn't explain it, couldn't rationalize it. But the feelings were there, undeniable and real. She shifted on the couch, leaning forward slightly. "I think about that night all the time," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. I can't stop thinking about it. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to tell her that I thought about it too, that it haunted my every waking moment. But I couldn't bring myself to say the words. Instead, I just nodded, my heart racing. There was a long silence between us, filled with the weight of everything we weren't saying. I could feel the tension building again. That same dangerous pull that had led us down this path in the first place. And then, before I could stop myself, I said, I think about it too. The words were out of my mouth before I could take them back. And once they were spoken, there was no undoing them. Eleanor's eyes flicked up to meet mine. And in that moment, I knew there was no going back. We had crossed a line. And now we were standing on the edge of something even more dangerous. She didn't say anything at first, but the look in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. There was a heat there, a need that mirrored my own, and it terrified me. But at the same time, it excited me in a way I couldn't deny. We can't keep doing this, I said, my voice shaky. Though even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it. Eleanor's gaze never left mine. I know, she whispered. But we're already here. Aren't we? The room felt too small. The air too thick. I wanted to run, to put as much distance between us as possible. But I couldn't move. I was trapped. Not by her, but by my own desires. The pull between us was too strong, too overwhelming to resist. Before I knew what was happening, she leaned in, her face inches from mine. I could feel her breath on my skin, warm and soft, and my heart pounded in my chest. For a split second, I thought I might be able to stop it, to pull away and end this before it went any further. But then her lips were on mine, and all rational thought disappeared. The kiss was different this time. It wasn't hesitant or unsure. It was full of the tension we had been holding back, the desire that had been building for so long. I kissed her back without thinking, my hands resting on the couch, gripping the fabric to keep myself grounded. It wasn't about love or affection. It was about need. A raw, burning need that neither of us could control. My heart raced, my mind a blur of thoughts I couldn't grasp. All I knew was that in this moment, there was no turning back. When we finally pulled apart, both of us were breathless, our foreheads resting against each other. The weight of what we had just done hung heavy in the air, but neither of us moved to break the moment. What are we doing? I whispered, more to myself than to her. I don't know, she replied softly. But I can't stop. Neither could I. As the days passed, we fell deeper into whatever this was. The moments we spent together grew more intense, more frequent, until it felt like the only time I was truly myself was when I was with her. I knew it couldn't last. I knew that something had to give eventually, but I wasn't ready to face that yet. Then one evening, everything came crashing down. I was sitting in the living room, the TV on but muted, my thoughts far away. Eleanor was upstairs, and my dad was supposed to be out late again. But I wasn't paying attention to the time. I was too wrapped up in my own head, thinking about everything we had done and everything we couldn't undo. The sound of the front door opening snapped me out of my thoughts. And for a moment, I froze, panic rising in my chest. I hadn't expected my dad to come home this early. I scrambled to stand up. But before I could react, he was already walking into the living room, his eyes scanning the space before landing on me. "Hey," he said, his voice casual but laced with something I couldn't quite place. "What are you doing?" "Just watching TV," I replied, my voice tight, trying to keep the panic from showing. I could feel my heart racing, the guilt gnawing at me like a live wire. He didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he did and was choosing to ignore it. He sat down on the couch, flipping through the channels like it was just another ordinary night. I tried to calm myself, to convince myself that everything was fine. But the weight of what we were hiding was pressing down on me, suffocating me. Eleanor came down the stairs a few minutes later, her face carefully neutral. She greeted my dad like nothing was wrong, like everything was perfectly normal. But I could see the tension in her eyes, the way her hands fidgeted at her sides. Dinner that night was excruciating. The conversation was stilted, and every time my dad spoke, I could feel the walls closing in. I couldn't meet Eleanor's gaze, couldn't focus on anything but the knot of fear tightening in my chest. I thought we might make it through the evening without incident, that maybe we'd manage to keep up the facade for one more night. But as we were clearing the table, my dad suddenly turned to me, his expression unreadable. "You've been spending a lot of time with Eleanor lately," he said, his voice calm but probing. My heart stopped. I glanced at Eleanor, who had gone pale, her eyes wide with fear. I guess," I stammered, trying to keep my voice steady. My dad's gaze lingered on me for a long moment, and I could feel the air in the room shift. "Anything you want to tell me?" he asked, his tone still casual. But there was something in it that made my blood run cold. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. My mind was racing, searching for something, anything, that would make this all go away. But I couldn't find the words. I couldn't lie. Not when the truth was hanging in the air between us, so close to being exposed. Eleanor's hand brushed mine under the table, a silent plea, but it only made the guilt worse. "No," I finally whispered, my voice barely audible. "Nothing." My dad didn't say anything for a long time. He just looked at me with those unreadable eyes. And in that silence, I knew he knew too. As I stood there, the weight of his gaze pressing down on me, I realized there was no escaping what had already begun. Even if the words were left unspoken, the truth was still there, waiting, and it would follow me no matter how hard I tried to outrun it.